It started as a peaceful afternoon in the park, a blind woman walking confidently with her loyal guide dog, Max. People admired their bond as the dog skillfully led her through the crowd. But then, out of nowhere, a biker stormed onto the scene, weaving recklessly through the park. Without warning, he began shouting at the woman, blaming her for being in his way. Things took a darker turn when he made a shocking move, kicking Max. What the biker didn't realize was that Max wasn't just any guide dog. This calm and focused companion had a past, one that made him anything but ordinary. As the tension in the air rose, the biker was about to face a side of Max that no one saw coming. What happened next left everyone in the park stunned and taught an unforgettable lesson about respect and judgment. Stay tuned to see how this story unfolds. Max let out a sharp bark, his stance shifting as if he instinctively knew this wasn't just another walk in the park. The blind woman, startled by the biker's outburst, tried to stay calm, gently gripping Max's harness to steady herself. She couldn't see the tension in Max's posture or the way he locked eyes on the biker, but she trusted him completely. The biker, still fuming, muttered something under his breath and revved his engine, drawing the attention of nearby onlookers. A few people stepped closer, whispering in concern, but no one dared intervene. Max didn't move an inch, his years of training keeping him firmly by his owner's side. But behind those calm eyes, something was brewing. What most people didn't know was that Max had once been a K9 officer, a highly trained police dog. Before becoming a guide dog, he'd spent years working on the force, using his sharp instincts and unwavering courage to protect and serve. Though now retired, those instincts were far from gone. As the biker leaned forward, gesturing aggressively, Max stood his ground, his every muscle ready. The crowd watched, holding their breath, sensing that something big was about to happen. The biker, clearly enjoying the chaos he caused, dismounted his motorcycle, smirking as he sized up Max. "What's the big deal?" he scoffed, brushing off the growing murmurs from the crowd. "It's just a dog." His dismissive tone made some people shift uncomfortably, but still, no one stepped forward. The blind woman, her voice steady despite the situation, spoke firmly. "Max is not just a dog. He's my guide, my protector. And you've crossed a line." Her words carried weight, though she couldn't see the smug grin on the biker's face. She gently patted Max's head, feeling the tension in his body. "Easy, Max," she whispered, trying to calm him. But Max's eyes remained locked on the man, his body language signaling he was ready for anything. Unbeknownst to the biker, one of the onlookers recognized Max. It was an off-duty officer who had worked alongside the loyal German Shepherd during his K9 days. He stepped forward, his voice low but firm. "That's no ordinary dog," he said, catching the biker off guard. "You just messed with one of the best K9s our force ever had." The biker's smug expression faltered for a moment, but he quickly brushed it off. "So what?" he sneered. "What's a dog gonna do?" Little did he know, he was about to find out. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, sensing that the situation was escalating. Max's eyes never left the biker, his muscles taut and his breathing steady. The air around them felt thick with anticipation, like the calm before a storm. The blind woman tightened her grip on the harness, but she wasn't worried about herself. She trusted Max, she had to. The officer who had recognized Max stood silently to the side, watching the biker carefully. "You have no idea who you're dealing with," he said, his voice filled with quiet authority. "This dog saved lives, and now you've gone too far." But the biker, growing more agitated by the second, scoffed at the warning. His pride wouldn't let him back down now. "I don't care if he's some hero dog. I've had enough of this nonsense." With a sneer, he took a step forward, raising his boot in a threatening motion. Max, sensing the danger, suddenly shifted into full alert mode. He let out a low growl, a sound so menacing that even the biker seemed to hesitate. The crowd fell into a tense silence, the tension in the air palpable. The woman spoke softly but firmly, "Max, no." But it was too late. In that split second, Max's instincts kicked in. His training from years as a K-9 officer took over. With the speed and precision of a seasoned professional, he moved in a blur, his jaws snapping inches away from the biker's leg. The biker froze, eyes wide in shock. The crowd gasped collectively, some stepping back in fear. The officer, now fully alert, stepped forward and addressed the biker one last time. "You have no idea what you've done," he said, his voice low, almost a whisper. "You've just pushed him too far." The biker's defiance wavered, but he still didn't back down. "Get your damn dog off me," he shouted, panic creeping into his voice. But Max wasn't done yet. His eyes never left the biker, his every move calculated. The tension was so thick, you could almost taste it. What would happen next? The crowd was on edge, waiting for the inevitable clash to unfold. Max's growl rumbled through the stillness, a sound that seemed to echo in the air. The biker was visibly rattled, but his anger still flared. "Get him off me now," he screamed, stepping back and waving his arms wildly. But Max didn't budge. His intense gaze was locked on the biker, unwavering and filled with an almost predatory focus. The crowd shifted uneasily, unsure whether to intervene or step back. The officer who had recognized Max hesitated, then looked around the group as if realizing something. His eyes narrowed. "This isn't just about the dog anymore," he muttered under his breath. Just as the biker looked like he might take another step forward, this time in full rage, there was a loud, sudden screech of tires in the distance. A black SUV tore into the park, coming to a screeching halt right next to the scene. The doors slammed open, and two men in dark suits rushed out, scanning the crowd. The officer's eyes widened in recognition. "No way," he whispered, stepping back. The tension, already thick, seemed to snap at the arrival of these strangers. The biker froze, suddenly unsure of what was happening, as if he'd entered a situation he couldn't control. The two men in suits approached quickly, one of them pulling out a badge. "Step aside," he ordered, his voice sharp. "We're taking over from here." The blind woman felt the change in the air, sensing that something was off, but she couldn't understand what was happening. Her grip on Max tightened. The officer, who had been trying to defuse the situation, was now visibly on edge. "You need to leave," he told the suited men, his voice tense. "This has nothing to do with you." But the man with the badge stepped forward, his expression cold and unfazed. "It has everything to do with us. This dog is part of something much bigger than you think." The crowd held its breath, their eyes shifting between the suited men, the officer, and Max, who was still watching the biker with unyielding intensity. What did they know that no one else did, and why was everyone suddenly so afraid? The stakes had just been raised. This wasn't just about a dog or an angry biker anymore. Something far deeper and more dangerous was lurking just beneath the surface, and Max, it seemed, was at the center of it all. The suited men stood tall, their presence chilling, but Max's focus remained on the biker. The blind woman, still unaware of the full scope of the situation, tightened her grip on his harness, silently pleading for him to stay calm. But Max's instincts were sharper than ever, and it was clear he wasn't backing down. The biker, sensing the growing tension and the strange turn of events, took a shaky step back, his bravado crumbling. The officer, now looking directly at the men in suits, spoke with urgency. "I told you, this doesn't concern you. Max is just a retired K-9, a hero in his own right. What more do you want from him?" The man with the badge, his eyes cold and calculating, turned to the officer. "You don't understand. This dog is a key piece of a much larger operation." He paused, his gaze flicking to Max, then back to the crowd. "We've been tracking him for years. He's not just any dog. He's been part of an undercover mission we've been running for the past 5 years. The officer's expression twisted in disbelief. "What are you talking about?" The suited man took a deep breath, his tone serious now. Max was a critical part of a covert operation to take down an international smuggling ring. His skills were unmatched, and he collected intel we couldn't get from human agents. After his retirement, we thought he'd vanish into a peaceful life, but clearly someone's caught wind of his past. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, the pieces slowly falling into place. Max, the seemingly ordinary guide dog, had been far more than anyone could have guessed. The biker, who had been watching the exchange in stunned silence, now looked visibly terrified. I didn't know," he stammered, shaking. "I didn't mean." Before he could finish, the suited man interrupted him sharply. "It doesn't matter. What's done is done, but you're not walking away from this." His voice carried a cold finality. In that moment, Max made his move. With a swift, fluid motion, he lunged toward the biker, not with the intent to harm, but to subdue. The biker fell backward, fear plastered on his face, as Max kept him pinned to the ground, his paws steady and firm. The suited man looked at the officer, his expression softening slightly. "We'll handle it from here," he said, his voice now filled with a strange mix of authority and respect.